Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I know we needed a few extra minutes for folks to get in, so we're going to run a few minutes over to make up for the time, and we can make other shifts in the schedule accordingly. We like to try and stay on time here, but we're also pretty well schooled in making adjustments across the day, so we'll be good. But again, good afternoon, and I hope all of you have been having a good time. I hope you've all found this week worth doing. I know we've only got 24 hours or less to go, and certainly, I don't know about you, but I thought last night Under the Stars was just gorgeous. That was the first time we did that. I thought it was great. About 48 hours ago, I stood in the same spot and introduced you to a guy by the name of Sean O'Donnell. By any measure, a pretty remarkable human being. I think from the chatter afterwards, most of you agree. A great American, an unusually effective advocate, a talented innovator, and as many of you discovered in your conversations with him after his public remarks, generous with his time and openness about his truth. Sean is a former client, now friend, who inspires and challenges me, and hopefully did so for you as well. Today's guest is another client of mine, another person who has a remarkable life story, another American that I'm blessed to have routine access to, another executive who innovates, teaches, and challenges me in almost every interaction, another intellectual who has, in her own ways, made the nation we live in just a little better, and continues to do so as a matter of daily routine. While it's still only about a year into our professional working relationship, I hope, it's acceptable to also call her a friend. Kimberly Carter grew up in the American South in Tennessee. In some ways, America was a very different country then. In some ways, it is frustratingly and heartbreakingly unchanged, a theme that we've talked about a lot this week. Kim worked harder than most to get the level of high school education that was congruent with her intellect, and I'd like you to try and imagine being 14 years old and taking on school administrators. She was admitted to one of the best schools of journalism in the United States, the University of Missouri at Columbia, and at times continued to advocate for herself there. She spent most of her career at a company that you should be familiar with, Hallmark. And while she had a bunch of successes at Hallmark, one of her most notable was being a member of, and to a larger extent than she might be comfortable admitting, leading the team that launched the Mahogany line of cards and products, cards with messaging that speaks to the culture and experiences of Black consumers in ways that were lacking previously. While Kim's no longer at Hallmark, it continues to be one of the company's most successful brands. Today, our guest lives and operates in what I think of as two very different worlds: the highly regulated world of aviation and the bleeding-edge technology world of artificial intelligence and machine learning for one of the nation's busiest airports. DFW, or Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, is larger than the island of Manhattan, and I think serves currently as the fourth largest airport in the world. As an innovator in both classic consumer products as well as technology, Kim is one of the most interdisciplinary and cross-functional of creators I know. Kim is here simply because we asked and flew in all the way from Texas to be here for you, to be here because she feels you are all worth it. And I'd agree. As such, what on earth is that noise? All right. As such, I ask you to show her the insane level of appreciation that she's due. Citizens and staff of Girls and Boys State, I give you your teacher and guest speaker, the amazing Kimberly Carter.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I am so happy. That's so nice for you all to stand up. I appreciate that. My mic's on, because I can hear it, okay. I'd like to introduce myself, but I don't have to after that introduction. That's very kind. He talked about the American South being a very different place or a different country than it is now. I want you to know I'm not that old, so I just want you to, let's make sure that we take that in consideration as well. Okay, that's okay. Okay, so my name is Kim Carter, and I'm a wife, and I'm a mother, and I'm an innovator, and I'm a creator, and I'm a minister. And I would say an armchair theologian, but probably beyond that. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you all because I understand that you all are being shaped into future leaders. We live in a world that is very, very different from, or you all live in a world, or I guess we do together, that's very different from the world that I grew up in, even though we're talking 20, 30 years ago when I was in high school or in college. And so in 30 years, we have seen huge advances in technology. We've seen huge advances in the way that we are able to relate to each other. We've seen huge advances in globalization. So some of the ways that you interact and take for granted, the way that you begin to speak to people, the ways that you can reach out to people, those were not available just 20 or 30 years ago. And so that means that the world is very different and will continue to be different. Because I work in technology, if you look at the difference between how long it took people to adopt a television, maybe 80 to 100 years, but it took people maybe 10 to 15 to adopt the internet. And so technology adoption and the way communication goes throughout the world is very different, and that's going to mean something for your leadership. It's going to mean something for the knowledge base that you need to have. It's going to mean something for the kind of people that you're going to need to be to engage the world on a global stage. But before I get into a little bit more of that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own story. When I was in about the 10th grade, about the age you guys are now, I walked into my high school biology class. And soon after, the teacher walked in and he told everyone, okay, turn to chapter, let's say 14, I don't remember. Turn to chapter 14. I want you to read that chapter and we're going to talk about it. And soon after that, he put his head on the desk and he went to sleep. He put his head on the desk and went to sleep. So, for some of my high school colleagues, they were like, woohoo, time for a break. We're going to be able to play around a little bit. For me, that was a signal. You know what the signal was? For me, the signal was I'm in the wrong place. See, when I was in high school, my neighborhood high school wasn't very well equipped. We had to share books. And I don't want you to think that I'm from the Harriet Tubman era. We're talking about in the 80s. We had to share books. We had to share dictionaries. There were no experiments in the labs for biology or for chemistry. And so when I walked into the biology class and saw my teacher go to sleep, I thought, I got to get out of here. But today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened on my way to I got to get out of here. And I want you to understand some insights on what that's going to mean for what kind of leaders you guys will be in the future. I'm hoping that by sharing some of my I got to get out of here stories, those things will help you be a more empathetic leader, because we live in a big world, like I mentioned earlier. We live in a big world where there are a lot of people with a lot of stories. And if you're going to lead teams or lead political processes or lead people, it'll be very helpful for you to understand some of the worlds that these people come from. You do realize that by the virtue of the fact that you are sitting here in this room, that you have exposure to knowledge, to people, to things that a good portion of children in the United States don't have exposure to. So that automatically gives you a perspective that you might start to assume others have. But I want you to be careful about that. I want you to be careful about what you might assume others might know about the world and about the world that we live in. So just by virtue of the fact that you're here, just by virtue of the fact that you're being exposed to some things, you're already a leader because your knowledge base is going to be expanded more than some of your peers is. I hope to deposit something today that will make you a different kind of leader. One with some broader perspective that will help you produce positive impact in the world. So anyway, I'll get back to my story. When I thought to myself, I got to get out of here, I had to figure out how, right? How am I going to get out of here? So one evening I was watching the news and they talked about a program called an optional program. An optional program in Tennessee was a program that they set up at this time in the 80s to balance out racial equities in education. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was a city almost like Birmingham, Alabama, that has a pretty volatile racial history. And so there were a lot of things that people were trying to bring cultures together and try to figure out how to bring equity to education and those types of things. And so while we were trying to figure that out, the state of Tennessee, and particularly Memphis, put some programs together that would try to help attract children to different schools where they can be prepared to college. So I heard about this optional program, and then they told us, okay, all you have to do is apply for this program. If you have the right academics and the right grades, you can get into this program and you can be prepared for college. I thought, wow, I'm going to go apply. So the next morning I got up to go to the school guidance office, and I talked to the guidance counselor. But before I talked to her, there was a young man standing in front of me who had asked for an ACT waiver so that he could take the test again. This is what the guidance counselor said. Most of the kids at this school only make a 14 or a 15 on the ACT, so I wouldn't waste my time or waste my money. Standing behind him, I thought, And then I thought, she better not say that to me. But then I thought, well, let me just ask. I said, I'd like an application to go to an optional school. This is what she said. Well, most of the kids at this school don't have the academic record to be accepted to an optional school. So I don't know if you need to waste your time. Plus, we don't even keep those applications in this office. I thought, yeah, now I know I'm in the wrong place. Since there was no Google then, we had the phone book. I don't even know if y'all still have phone books or even if that's still a thing. I had to go to the phone book and look up the Board of Education, order an application, have them send it to my house via the mail. I had to fill it out and send it back to the Board of Education to see if I could get accepted. So the good news is I got accepted, yes, to this school, yes. Thank you. So then I went to my mama and my daddy and I said, hey, I got accepted to this academic program. I'm going to college. I was so excited. And my mother said, oh, honey, I'm so proud of you. And then she said, how are you going to get there? I hadn't thought about that. I was 15. So I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get there. So I went back to the phone book, called the bus company, got a bus schedule, and tried to map out my way to get to this particular school. Turns out I had to get up at 5 a.m. and take 2 bus transfers across town to get to high school. And I pretty much did that every day, unless I was able to bum a ride. I pretty much did that every day until I finished high school. But here's some insight on a couple of these pieces of stories I just told you. One insight is that there are people who are gatekeepers who have access to help you get access to things. But because of their perceptions of you, they won't give you access. Go around them. Go around them. Secondly, there are people who look at you and will make judgments about who you are and about what you're able to achieve, to the point where they say, oh, don't worry about that. They'll make a pronouncement over you to say who you are and what you're able to achieve. Don't listen to them. Keep going. So after getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning and going to school every single day, I finally graduated from high school. And I graduated from high school that was different. I have 6 brothers and sisters. And I graduated from high school different than all of the rest of them. But mostly because I just got up and just kept going. One of the things I want to share with you today, or drop a seed, is that there is power in perseverance. There is power in saying, okay, I hear what you're saying about most of the kids at this school. Okay, I hear what you're saying that I might not be able to get there. Okay, I hear what you're saying about what people are willing to or able to accomplish, but I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to keep going. In the road that you're going to travel in life as a leader, you are going to have barriers and obstacles in front of you. Some of them will be gatekeepers, like the woman in the guidance office. Some of them might be just people, well-meaning family members who they love you, but they can't get up and take you to school. My parents worked in manufacturing jobs where they had shifts that would change abruptly. 3 to 11 shift one day, 7 to 3 shift another day. They couldn't always predict their schedule, so they knew they wouldn't always be able to help me get to school. It's not that they didn't want to, it's just that they couldn't. So here's another insight. There are people who live a life and are living a life right now that is very different from the one you're living. And because of that, they can see things you can't see. Because they can see things you can't see, I would advise you to make listening your superpower. Make listening your superpower. And there are some people who can only do what people give them access to do, because they are not born into situations where they have ready access. So I want you to think about that. Because I was able to defy the guidance counselor, try to think of ways to get past my parents and figure out how I was going to get to school, I was able to graduate from high school. But there are some children for whom such an extraordinary feat by personality or virtue of whatever, they wouldn't do that. The young man in front of me, when he was told that he couldn't get an ACT waiver, $25 waiver. $25 is a lot for some families. Because he was told he couldn't get it, he said, oh, okay. And then he just left and never took the test again. For some people, that answer that is no turns them away. For some people, that answer that is no spurs them on. But since we don't know, I think as future leaders, it's incumbent upon us to lower those barriers as much as we can to make sure that people have access. Sometimes people believe that people don't achieve because they're lazy or because they don't move into spaces of access like they need to. Sometimes that may be the case. I don't know every human, but there are people who want to achieve, but because of the way things are set up or because of the way people perceive things, they have so many barriers in front of them. It's just an energy drag just to even get up and go to school. So another piece of insight is just some things that are basic to some of you kids here, getting up, going to school, being taken to school, or people moving you around, providing programs for you, providing access. Some of those things you might take for granted. There's a whole slew of people who haven't had that. And as you become a leader, I want you to be able to remember that. I'm going to fast forward to the University of Missouri in Columbia. So after finishing up high school, I went to college. And I wanted to go to the University of Missouri in Columbia because it is a school of journalism. And I wanted to be a journalist. So I was so excited. Once I got to school, I had my father went there we were driving to school, and my father was a little upset the whole time. And I finally asked him, I was like, Daddy, what's going on? He said, honey, you know we don't have the money to do this. You know I don't have the money to send you to college. I'm really concerned that we're not going to be able to do this. And what I told him was, if you drop me off, I'll finish. Just drop me off. Now for a daddy, that's hard for his girl, right? To drop his girl off and then to finish. But I knew then his concern became my concern. And I carried that with me most of the time I was at the University of Missouri. At the University of Missouri, you have to study 2 years of prerequisites before you get into the School of Journalism, and you have to have a 3.0 grade point average to be able to get into the school, or 3.2 grade point average to be able to get into the school. So once I jumped in, I studied really hard, did what I could to get into the school. I took my first class there. People called it a weed out class, so I don't know, a lot of you will be probably going to college soon. There is a such thing as weed out classes, and they are classes that are so challenging that some people just, throw up their hands and give up. So the first class that you take in journalism at the University of Missouri School of Journalism is called News 105. And so for my first final for News 105, that's when you learn how to write news stories. Very different from then than it is now. But that's how you learn how to write news stories. So in News 105, I turned in my first feature story. It was 40% of my grade. When I turned that story in, one of my professors looked at the contents of it and saw what you call an attribution error, which was I had referred to a person who was an academic doctor as doctor. And according to AP style at that time, I'm not as familiar with it now, but according to Associated Press style, at that time, you're not supposed to refer to a person as a doctor in a news story that's not a medical doctor. So to teach me a lesson, my professor decided she would take off 10 points every single time I referred to that person as doctor, which left not much grade left. So I went to her to appeal and say, okay, yeah, I'm learning my lesson here about making sure I follow the style guide, but isn't this a little harsh? What about the research? What about the writing? Can we do something here? This is what she told me. She said, I don't care if you think you can write like Hemingway. You will never get a degree in journalism from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. I was stunned. I was looking at the mathematical impossibility of passing this class, and I was looking at the determination in her face when she said that to me. I'm gonna be honest, y'all, I just broke out into tears, and I cried for 3 weeks because I was convinced she was right. I was convinced that she was right, that I would never get a degree from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. And when I was in high school, I was an honor student, so this was a big ego hit as well. As I was thinking about preparing to go home, I decided, well, this is just one person giving her opinion on what she thinks should happen. There are all these other classes I took, and they didn't go badly. So I had to tuck my tail, so to speak. I took the class over again, and I made the grade that I needed to make. But here's another insight for you. There are people in authority who will say to you declaratively and tell you what you can or what you cannot do. And their voice will sting, and it can be a boss, it can be a colleague that you respect, and they will try to deter you from getting to where you need to move to. But I decided, okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I've gotten this far, I'm gonna keep going. Well, eventually, I got a degree in journalism from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Thank you. I could tell you some more stories about that, but we may not have time. I might throw one more in when I can. But that was a road to get to, and it was an extraordinary road. What I recognized was that everybody, when they saw me, they didn't see me like I saw me. They didn't see somebody who wanted to persevere, somebody who wanted to make it in the world, somebody who wanted to make a contribution. Everybody didn't see me like that. And so I had to decide, am I gonna keep going even if people don't see me like that? Or am I gonna tuck my tail and run? So I decided to stay in there. And I stayed in there. Not only did I get a undergraduate degree from the University of Missouri School of Journalism, but then I went on to get a master's degree in what I consider to be one of the toughest subjects. No, it's not physics. Theology. Wrestling with ideas about God. Very challenging. But what I learned from those experiences were, keep going. When I talk to a person that may come from a different faith background than I came from, do I say, oh, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know who God is. Do I say that? Or do we sit and do we enter into a dialogue where we can try to understand each other? It took me a while to work through those rhythms, but that was one of the most shaping experiences that I've had because it helped me to wrestle with my own worldviews. But there are people who would look at you, even in that context, and outright dismiss you. As a matter of fact, in theological institutions today, if you are studying theology, or at least particularly the one that I went to, people kept referring to me as a member of the black church. The black church. And according to some Christian traditions, or most Christian traditions, and I'm a Christian, the church is the church. It's not the black church. However, the context we live in America creates that. So here's another insight. We are products of the contexts that we come from. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's good. It just means it's a good starting place for you to be able to engage in dialogue with other people. We don't have to be hostile when we don't agree. We can be a lot more open. Open doesn't mean that you're bending. Open doesn't mean that you're going to change your beliefs. But open does mean, I believe, that you're intelligent. Open means you're compassionate. Open means that we create a better world than a world that's going to lock horns all the time. And so I want to make sure that you take away that insight. I'm going to move from the University of Missouri School of Journalism past the theology degree to innovation and to product innovation. So one of my first product programs that I worked on, or innovation programs, I was asked to be the creative lead on a product program for our first ever crack at innovation. Now, innovation is a field that started to gain a little bit of prominence about 15 years ago when companies started to discover that what we did in the industrial era to make products work, we're going to have to do something different. So we're going to have to think differently. We're going to have to shape products differently. We're going to have to distribute them differently. We're going to have to think about them differently. And so as an innovation leader, I was asked to help us develop a product cross-functionally, meaning I was a creative, but I needed to work with engineers. I needed to work with product managers. I needed to work with schedulers and project managers to be able to develop some product. While we were working on the product, our program leaders, who were what they call product managers at the company that I worked for, which was Hallmark, they were putting together all this theory, all these decks on here's why we should do this program, here's what we think people are saying, and all of these things. They were putting this information together, and they were leading the program. So by the time we got to the point where it was time to develop products, my job as a creative leader was to actually materialize something that people were going to pay for. I asked my program lead, I said, okay, we've been in here 4 weeks, we put together a deck, but we don't have any products. What's going on? This is what she said to me. You creatives need to know your place, and when it's time for you to do your products, if you want me to develop your deck and to or presentation, if you want me to develop your presentation, then you just need to wait until we tell you it's time to do that. I thought, I said, is that what you think? Do you think that I need you to help me develop a presentation? Because I think, from a communication standpoint, I think you might want me to help you. My job is to come up with a product out of this. You're going to be good if you have a deck explaining things, but I need to come up with a product. So if I fast forward, one of the things I shared with her, I'm going to let you guys stay over here and do this piece where you talk about and pontificate. I've got to come up with a product. So I gathered 6 creatives from some of my peers, and I led them in the development of a product that actually fulfilled what we call a latent product need, which means it's a product that we've been meeting other customer needs, like if you were meeting mother's needs, and now you're going to meet father's needs. So I was able to help us develop a product that met a latent need and also helped us meet all of our sales goals and our metrics. So here's the insight from that. In your career, there are people who will outright dismiss you. They will say, because you're creative or because you're whatever, they will dismiss your contributions, and even if you let them, try to hinder your ability to be able to deliver what you need to deliver. Don't let them. Let them know that you have a perspective, that you have a professional perspective. Let them know who you are, and not just let them know, go do it. Go do it. I'll say one more professional experience. I started off as a writer when I was at Hallmark, and I started writing cards, and we'd get all these requests to write cards. And at some point, the card writing I did was I was doing it, but I thought, on a particular day when I was writing a Mother's Day card, I thought, I wonder what my mama would want to hear on Mother's Day. So I started to write other things. I would write how I was trained, and then I started to write things with a little bit more cultural nuance, a little bit more phraseology that I thought would work for the culture. So I gathered up, a growing stack of writing that I thought could become a new product voice, and I thought this will be my stamp on the world. Eventually, that stack became like a small body of work that we could work with. Then I hired, or actually asked them to do me a favor, some of my professors from school, African American literature, women's literature. I asked them to come and help me develop even a broader product voice until a few pieces of copy became a whole body of work. I pulled that together with some artists into some mock-up product, and then I showed that to our leadership, saying, I think this can be a new brand. I think we can capture this voice for these customers, and I think we'll be able to build a revenue stream out of it and please some of our customers. This is what I was told. We don't have those people in our stores. We don't think that the voice is different. People are just people. There's no different voice for this particular group and this particular group. There's no voice that's different. Why don't you just keep doing what you're doing, or keep your day job, because I was kind of working on this one at night, and don't worry about it. Well, when they said that, I said, okay, I'll be back. I went to go tweak some things. Long story short, 17 presentations later, we were able to create a brand new brand called Mahogany that eventually ended up becoming a $20 million brand for the business. Yes. Now you guys are with me, so you know the insight on that one. Somebody's going to try to tell you that your voice or your perspective isn't unique, or that it's not valuable, or that it doesn't work for the world. And part of it is that, remember I told you earlier, sometimes there are things and experiences that people have where they can see things that you don't see. So just because they can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It might just mean you have to continue to tweak the vision so that it becomes clearer. And that is about the power of perseverance. Continuing to persevere, even when people tell you things about yourself, you'll have to fight against them. But I'll tell you what, the biggest thing you'll have to fight against is yourself. You have to ask yourself, okay, are they telling the truth here? Or well, should I keep going? Should I stop? No, as future leaders, when you hear things like this, I'm hoping that these stories perk up your desire to persevere. But I also hope that they perk up your desire to listen as a leader. A lot of people, when they get into leadership, they think you're supposed to know everything. I believe the best leaders are the best listeners. I believe the best leaders are the best listeners. And if you can hear as a leader, you don't have to know everything, because people will bring ideas, and if you just got a decent ear, you might be able to bring a $20 million brand to your company, or a $20 million infrastructure project to your city, or a $20 million program to disadvantaged youths in a given metropolis or metropolitan area. So what I'll say about that is keep listening, but keep persevering. And open your mind and open your heart to hearing other people, so that those things can shape the kind of leader that you'll become. So I hope that some of the things that I've said today have been helpful to you. I'm grateful to be here with such a great group of young people that are here trying to learn about how to shape the world. Know that when you're trying to shape the world, it is not going to be a linear or short path to be able to do that. You're going to have to deal with yourself, and you're going to have to deal with a whole lot of different people to get to where you need to get to. But if I can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, get on a city bus, and go to high school every single day, if I can get to the University of Missouri Columbia, right, not knowing how I was going to pay for it, and still get through that, if I can walk through some of the corporate politics that I've had to walk through to be able to get to do innovation work, to be able to introduce new brands, certainly with the leadership start that you all have, you can do amazing things. Thank you.
So with that, I think we just turned the microphone on, and as we did a couple of days ago, we'll invite people who want to start asking questions to make their way over to the microphone. One of the things that, while we're waiting for people to come up, just one quick second, if you can, this might be really difficult to do, but in about, I don't know, 60 or 90 seconds, could you just talk really quickly about the project you and I have talked about you're working on at the DFW airport? Just, is there like a quick vignette version of that you can do?
I think so.
Give it your best shot.
Okay, so I'm working with artificial intelligence technology to bring a digital concierge to the airport. Something that you can, because of the nature of artificial intelligence, it can hold a lot of information, and you need a lot of information when you go to the airport. So one of the things I'm working on is to help us have a digital artificial intelligence version of that I'm testing right now. Something that you can walk up to. It's like a synthetic human that you can talk, and doesn't look creepy because I tried that 10 years ago. A synthetic human that you can talk to that can answer questions about the airport. When's my flight? Where's the water? Where's the bathroom? Where can I get stuff to eat? And we're having some pretty good success with testing on that right now. It'll take a while before that's developed and can roll out, but that's my 30-second on that.
Just wanted to give people a chance to get to the mic. Wonderful. It's exciting stuff. Seen a few previews, looks really exciting. First question, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Madison from the City of Courage.
Hi, Madison.
Hi. I was wondering, what strategies really helped you persevere through all of the roadblocks that you had to go through to get where you are now?
You know, to be completely honest, we grew up without having much. And when I said to you earlier, I was saying to myself, I got to get out of here. That was my motivating factor. And I had a very loving family, and we had to say no to so many things. It was disheartening to me. So some of it was motivated by, I really need to make a better life for myself, and some of the things that I saw around me. Now, it wasn't all bad. It just was, I felt like there were too many no's that had to be said in my life. And so those no's, I thought at the time, I don't know if this is altogether true, but I thought at the time, if I could just get to college, I won't always have to say no. And so for me, it was a motivation to move away from, a school where we had to share books to a place where I was being prepared to go to college.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'm also from the City of Courage. So could you give an example of the cultural nuance you were talking about within your brand?
Say more.
Could you give an example of the cultural nuance you were talking about within your brand?
Cultural nuances?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we talked about when we first started talking about mahogany was the culture in African America, probably at that time, is Southern. It's more Southern rooted. So people kind of in the South and kind of moved out like this into the United States. So a lot of Southern aphorisms or phrases like calling your mother mama, or calling your grandmother big mama, or certain references to food and comfort and going to church on Sunday, and even some of those types of phrases we actually put a church hymn Precious Lord Take My Hand. We put that on a card because that's something that people sing at funerals pretty traditionally. We would refer to things like the electric slide. I don't know if any of you even know what that is, but we would refer to things like that in the product so that people would know we were having an intra-cultural conversation versus an inter-cultural conversation.
Oh, okay. That's actually really cool. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maeve, and I was just curious, apart from your mahogany line, do you have any specific personal or career accomplishments which you find most valuable to yourself in your life?
Yeah, well, most of them are, I'll say this. One of the projects that I worked on at the airport it's not very sexy or glamorous, so to speak, but one of the things I've been able to set in place at the airport is a sustainable or starting to help us to become a circular economy at the airport. We produce about 6 tons of waste every year at the airport, and so we're trying to figure out what do we need. First of all, the costs are going up to haul the waste. We're losing a lot of landfill space, and it's just gross, right, that we have to keep building landfills. And so one of the things I was trying to do was look for possible solutions to being able to help us not have to pay what we paid for waste, but also to help us to do something good with it. So one of the things I proposed was an anaerobic digester and working out our waste stream strategies. And so now we're actually doing what they call a design. I think they call it a program design on it where engineers have to look at it. But we did all the work to propose what we wanted to do to create a circular economy. And now some of that work is in place right now to help us reduce our carbon emissions and to use our waste for something good at the airport. So that is a career accomplishment that I'm feeling pretty good about.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, I'm Camille Miner, and a little bit about me, I'm Mormon, so I'm kind of in a religious minority in Massachusetts, and I was just curious, as a woman of faith and a theologian, what advice would you give to women who are also religious that find themselves unmotivated by their religious community to pursue their own career?
Ooh, that's a good question, and I'm going to do what I can to answer it. I do think at some point you first of all, develop your own theological perspective. And I'm not saying that you should leave Mormonism or do any of that. I'm not suggesting that. But the tradition that I grew up under, the gift that I was given in seminary was to look at it under a microscope, right? And to think about what I consider to be sacred texts and what they were saying versus what our culture says, and try to reconcile this in the type of person I wanted to be. And so I would suggest, I'm going to say a deep dive, to ask questions, question the texts, your sacred texts and I'm not saying question them in a dismantling type of way, but in a thoughtful way. It's a hard journey, but then you can say a great yes to your faith versus a tentative yes because I'm not sure that this is going right. And then maybe find other women in the community that have modeled that and ask them how they have done it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alec. I'm curious on what would you say to people who are considering pursuing a more creative degree like theater or visual arts? How would that affect your position like business? Like how does that take place within if you're working in the office and such like that?
Well, it depends on where you want that to take you ultimately. Are you saying you want to pursue a career from a theater perspective, or you're saying you want to use theater as a means to another career?
Use theater as a means to another career.
I will say, because I did theater in college, I didn't want to pursue it as a career, but I just did it because I love it. But theater is a great confidence builder, and it gives you great presence if you do it right. Well, and I'm thinking about stage presence. Are you talking about technical behind the stage?
No, I'm talking like acting and such. And,
okay,
yeah.
It can work for you in certain careers in sales. It can work. It can work for you in creative, like account lead if you're having to sell products. That kind of confidence and being able to stand up and be able to confidently declare something about a product can really be helpful in theater. Your job will be to convince people, because people have this they want to go from the shortest path to, okay, this person does account management, this person has a degree in marketing, right? Your job will be to craft a story that helps them see that your degree works in their context. So learn as much as you can about whatever industry you'd like to go into, but any industry that takes persuasion, selling, that type of thing, I think theater degrees work well for, but then you have to do the work of doing the translation for those who would hire you. Would you say that was right? Because I know you do. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm asking him because he's a business coach, and I completely believe that.
So you said that you were like, you had a very creative direction in going into your businesses. You had a very creative direction in going into your businesses. Was it difficult, and especially in like college and just like new careers you're entering, not having people trying to silence your voice or not having a voice, or even with your perseverance, like it's difficult being looked over? Would that, did you experience that? And if so, like how did you deal with that?
Oh, it was very difficult. I guess I want to if I could just say one thing, prepare to persevere, like decide now. Because when I was finishing my senior year in college, I actually had I was taking a PR class, and in that PR class you have to produce on demand. So, they'll give you a problem, like at a company, like when Tylenol, you guys probably weren't even born, but there was a company called, y'all know what Tylenol is, and they had like a poison scare many, many years ago, and people would use that as an exercise for PR people you got to come up with a story, 15 minutes, the media is going to call, this is what you have to do. So we had a class that helped us simulate that kind of pressure so that you get your facts straight, you get your story straight, and all of that before you have to talk to the media. And it was one of the classes that was required for my degree, and I tried to get into it 3 times, and the 3rd time the professor told me, yes, I'm so glad you're being proactive. I came to talk to him, I'm glad you came to talk to me. And so when I came back we had cards then, it wasn't all digital, but we had cards then. So I came back with my blue card saying, hey, Kurt, we got this, let's go. And he said, you're probably gonna have to take that next semester. Well, this was my last semester. I'd already gotten a job by now. I was like, no, I don't think I'm gonna take it next semester. So he and I are having this exchange, and a young lady comes out of his office that he had given my seat to. Now, the reason why this is important is because each seat in a PR class, you have to have a computer, so he can't give like 32 seats out, right? And so he had given my seat to someone else. And I know I had come earlier, and he had promised that he would give it to me. And I was one of 3 African Americans in that program, so I know you can't tell me you don't remember me, or maybe you can. But that's about being looked over, and I'm gonna tell you what I did. And I'm not saying this is the greatest thing necessarily, but I literally I told her, I'm coming to this class, I'm gonna take it, I'm not gonna wait another semester to do this. And I literally sat in the door of that classroom at 5 a.m. I said, you're gonna have to step over me to get in here. because you know you're not right and you know you gave my seat away. And then I went to sit in the front seat every class. And by the fourth class, thank you guys, y'all so kind, y'all were so kind. By the fourth class, he just let me. And I think he gave me a B for spite, but I didn't care about then because mission accomplished, right? I was trying to get out and get a job, right? But when you're looked over, sometimes you got to push. And now, as you guys can see, I have a little bit of a scrappy personality. So find a scrappy friend. If you're not scrappy, find somebody who'll say, girl, don't you let them do you like that? And let them egg you on and then come up with a good strategy. The other thing I told them is I will take my PR training and I will go to, one of the things about University of Missouri is they have a school newspaper that's a city newspaper. I said, I will take my journalism training and I will write a press release that makes this look really bad, and I will have them publish it. You want me to put you on blast like that? Because you need to open up this class because you promised me a seat. I've come in here 3 times and I know he gave it to this other woman. And then I asked him, okay, if the tables were turned and I came in here at the last minute, would I be able to get the seat? Would you push her out the seat to put me in it? And he didn't say anything about that. But that was one of you do sometimes, I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes as a woman of color, you can be people will see you as completely invisible. And sometimes will only see you as a woman of color. You're not an innovator, you're not a creative product director, you're not a product manager, you're not an intellectual, you're a black woman. So after I had spent several years at Hallmark doing product development and delivering products, one of the senior manager promotional opportunities I was approached for was the VP of diversity. I'm all about diversity. I embrace it, but I was like, but I've been doing product for 15 years. But sometimes people only see this, and we have to help people. First of all, I'm human, and I'm also a professional. And I might be able to provide some insight there, but we have to work a little harder, in my experience, to help people see you as a multidimensional human being and professional. Is that helpful? Did I say too much?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erin, and I was just wondering, like, at the 2 high schools that you went to, like, what kind of differences did you experience there?
Well, the first high school I went to had did not have a physics class because they couldn't get enough people to sign up for it. Some of the advanced math classes. So I was looking at these college curriculums to see like what it's going to take for me to get in here. And one of the reasons I wanted to leave is because the classes they offered were not commensurate with what I was going to need to submit as a transcript to get into college. So partly, the neighborhood school that I went to, it didn't offer enough of what I would need to be able to go to the college that I wanted to go to. And so that was one of the differences. We had some pretty decent teachers, some good, some not so good, and that's going to be true anywhere. But the nature of the programs, I'm going to be honest with you, when I went to this college preparatory school, people laughed at me because I was so excited about going into a chemistry lab where there were actual beakers and there were actual things that you could do from experience. So I was in there doing the experiments and reading over stuff. Some of these kids had already been through this and they had already seen these things. We didn't have that equipment in our lab. So I was excited to be able to learn. We also took a class that was a verbal, a Latin and Greek class that specifically was designed to prepare you for the SAT. That did not exist at my other high school. So the offerings of classes were so different, and the experiences and the materials that you had to work with. I was like a kid in a candy store, but some of the kids were like, why is she acting strange? And they would laugh at me because I was so excited about being able to learn. So that was a big, there were some pretty big differences between that. Even the lunch was different. When I went to this other school, they had and I thought this was really cool, they had a baked potato bar where you could put like brisket and all this stuff on your baked potato. No baked potato bars at the neighborhood school. So I was like, what? And it was a public school, so why y'all got a baked potato bar and we're eating those little dry rubbery hamburgers that they have, you know. But so it was very different. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about education, because I lived how different it can be. And there was kids that are smart and they want to learn, but they only learn what they're exposed to. So it was very different. The exposure was also very different. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Talia, and I'm from the city of Courage. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming here. You're doing exactly what I would want to do. You're talking about what you're passionate about, and us having to listen to it, I'm just really happy that you're here.
Thank you.
My question is that in the field of engineering, there aren't a lot of women in that field, and more specifically, there aren't a lot of women of color in that field, Hispanic women and Black women that I'm mostly talking about. So what would you tell women of color that want to pursue that field that aren't able to do it, whether it's because of not having that program at school, or simply like their school not wanting them to pursue that program, or their family telling them not to do it, or like not being able to do it financially?
Ooh, yeah, because I had all that. First of all, one of the things you have at your disposal that we didn't have was online learning. So there are online learning communities, and I don't know what the financial obligations are for that, but there's online learning communities that can help bridge some of those gaps. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm just gonna throw out a couple of things. If you have anybody, okay, if your family doesn't want to support it, that sounds like Godzilla. Yeah. But if your family doesn't want to support it, there may be other, I don't know if you are a member of a faith community or a member of some type of sorority community or whatever. Find somebody who can get behind the vision and show you some resources where you can get that. So there are like city resources like the Urban League that sometimes can help people with things like that, and be able to hook up with groups that can kind of help you strategize and map that out. So that's one thing, like to be able to find resources. But I would get online, I would go find, you know what, you can try this because I've done it too. Stalk some people on LinkedIn. Find a woman of color on LinkedIn and say, hey, because we love to help young people. Hey, I want to go into engineering. Here are my barriers. Can you point me to, and just keep asking that question until you find places, because the information will come forth, but you have to do some digging. And I want to tell you this, know that there are people who want to help, and you're not like in an isolated place. Just keep reaching out, and even if somebody says something crazy to you, well, skip them and just keep going. That's what I mean about persevering, until you're able to find somebody who can help you lay that strategy out. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Just one quick thing. The folks who are standing, we're going to try in the minutes we have to get through the folks who are standing. Anyone who comes up with a question after these folks, if you have time afterwards, but we'll see. Okay, let's see how we do.
Hi, my name is Courtney. I'm also from the city of Courage. I found it really interesting when you talked to us about like artificial intelligence and how you're developing that. What role do you think like these devices with a plethora of information coming into our world will play on like the service industry and people like us as teenagers doing those like smaller jobs? How do you think that's going to develop over time?
Well, I'll tell you what some authoritative sources say, because I do a little bit of trend work on that. Some sources say, I'm thinking about Foresight Factory is a source that we use. They say up to 11% of jobs might be displaced by artificial intelligence, meaning simple tasks like if you have a receptionist at the front desk that can answer a question, you can program and use the technical like machine learning to get something to answer, I don't know, 80-90% of the questions that are asked. So as an augment to what we have right now, artificial intelligence will become more and more I want to say ubiquitous or more pervasive in our society. So some people say up to 11% of jobs will be displaced. But I want you to think about this. Think about the horse people who were displaced when cars came. Or think about, I mean, this isn't, I don't know that it's something to be afraid of, because once that moves, sometimes other things move in its place. But it will be something that will enable us to move and get information quicker. And so it will displace some people, but I also think it will make some more opportunities and possibilities open. But be cognizant of the fact that sometimes people can do fakes with artificial intelligence, like people can put together CGI, just like what you see on the movies, CGI, and put somebody else's voice in somebody's mouth. It's unfortunate. But so just be a savvy technology consumer and understand, be able to develop your critical thinking skills so you can see what's right and so you can discern between what's right and what's more challenging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Doi. Hey, I'm the member of T1. So basically, I have one question. Do you have to listen to your parents' perspective about your careers?
Oh, wow. Well, don't quote me. Let's say that. I think you let that be input. Because I do think, in general, in an ideal scenario, your parents have known you since here. And sometimes, like I have a son that's a musician that's actually lives here in Boston, that I knew he was a musician when he was 18 months old. Like I knew he could hear tones, I knew that. So for observant parents and parents who have been seeing who you are, I think it's a good input. Then at some point, once you start to learn about your own skills and your own passions, it's also good for you to have some self-knowledge about what kind of careers you want to pursue. And I would say, instead of making an either or binary choice, I would include those two perspectives together to say, okay, what should I be pursuing, or what should I be thinking about? And then be prepared if something is, in particularly challenging and you have to go get some other type of funding or whatever, be prepared to pursue that if you need to do that. But I do think sometimes it can work better when you have those perspectives work together, your self-knowledge and your parents' knowledge.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Good afternoon. So in the
afternoon.
beginning of your speech, like when you were talking about going to school, you said many people, unlike you, could not succeed due to, quote, their personalities and their environments. So what do you think the current leaders of today, so then that could be anything from parents to teachers to the major politicians, as well as us as future leaders, should do to encourage that kind of mentality and the personality that people like you have that lets you succeed?
I think, and believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I just like to talk. But I do think that, I think a lot of different personalities can succeed. You just have to find the space the gap you need to fill in, right? So as an introvert, one of the things I've done in terms of networking, because sometimes that can be challenging for me, is, and I said this again, like I said, go find a scrappy friend. I've got several friends that are just raging extroverts. And if you're an introvert and you have a friend that's a raging extrovert, they can take you to a party, a networking event, you won't have to say a thing. I have a friend, she drags me around. This is my friend Kim, she does this. And then they've already introduced you, and then all you have to do is do the thing that introverts do well and engage in conversation with the person you've been talking to. So you have to use strategies like that. Everybody has something that they can lean into in terms of that. But in terms of being able to talk to leaders, or how do we shape that, I think we do have to make sure that we keep explaining to people, or keep making sure the information is available around understanding that people have different learning styles, different learning types, so that, and I feel like teachers are more savvy about that. Some leaders are more savvy about that. I know we have our personality little profiles on our desks at work, so that when somebody walks up to your desk, they can kind of see who they're talking to. So I think it's getting more savvy. I think we have to do I shouldn't say a better job, but just keep doing that. Keep making sure people understand there's a lot of different kinds of people, and we want to be able to develop learning strategies, develop networking strategies, and those types of things to accommodate all of those different types of personalities.
So would you say rather than encouraging one type of personality, we need to accept all kinds, even those that in the past may not have been as successful?
Would you say writing and encouraging? What did you say?
So, rather than encouraging personalities like your own and the ones that have been traditionally successful, we should be more open and accept the ones that maybe weren't as successful, like the people like your peer who did not follow up about the ACT exam. We should be more accepting of those people and have more opportunities for them rather than just straight up encouraging the personalities like your own.
You can, sir, but you do that at your own peril. I'm just going to be honest with you. We live in a world that has certain personalities, certain things. Sometimes you just have to fit. That's why I'm saying filling in the gap. I think we should be accepting of personalities like that, but whenever you go into a country, or go into a company, there are going to be different types of things in that company that work. What you want to do as a wise person, and I believe you're a wise person, you want to study what works. The best thing you can do is to understand where your personality can thrive and shine. If you wait for people to make accommodations for that, you're going to be waiting. I'm just going to be honest with you. But it doesn't mean you have to say, oh, I just don't have the personality to do that. No, you have to find roads around it. Like I said, I know it doesn't look like it, but I'm an introvert, and I've had to do a lot of work over my life to say, okay, I need some help over here for somebody to get me here, right? And that might be, for some personalities, that might be helpful. For extroverts, sometimes, it's like you ain't got to talk the whole time. You can go sit down, right? They need help with that. So I would say you still have to pull out your perseverance seed and work with that to get to the places where you need to get to. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
We are running late and we have a couple of announcements, so if you could add, if you think you can do your question kind of lightning round, let's see if we can get through them, okay? But real fast.
I think he's talking to me instead of y'all.
Hi. So I had a bit of a different question than the other ones to ask. So you started, you were the creator for the mahogany of Hallmark, right? So since it's worth like $20 million, like how does that like affect you? Since you were the creator, do you get like royalty or a certain share of each thing that's sold?
No, companies are very smart about that. No, you don't. No, you don't. They have you sign an agreement at the beginning that the inventions and those types of things that you come up with will be their intellectual property. But the trade for that is you don't have to go beating on everybody's door to get your brand distributed in 25,000 rooftops, right? So there's a trade for it. So you kind of sign away your intellectual property, but you get some things for it, and it's just a decision that you have to make whether or not you want to go do this on your own or whether you want to do this supported by the resources of the company.
So like, did you get any sort of different, it's called compensation for creating that?
No, well, not necessarily. I mean, you get promoted sometimes, and you get bonuses, and you get there are some things that you have access to that you get because the company is appreciative of what you have done. Sometimes that's not the case, and then in which case you have to make some decisions around that, which I've done that. But so it just kind of depends, But I don't, unless you sign an agreement, a contractual agreement that if I come up with something that's worth more than X, then this happens. Most companies won't do that, by the way, depending on what kind of company you're at. Other than that, unless you sign an agreement, when you go to a company, if you're an engineer and you do patents, well, sometimes and sometimes not. It just kind of depends. Usually the company has an agreement that you sign up front that what you invent will be their intellectual property, unless you guys make some other type of agreement.
All right, thank you.
Just so everybody knows, we're going to make one other adjustment later in the schedule so that we can get through our last two questions and our announcements. So we should be all right. So go right ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering where you've drawn your biggest support from.
Where I've drawn my biggest support from? I've got some amazing girlfriends. Well, my mama, she's gone now, but she was one of those people who would call and say, honey, don't you let those people make you, So my mama was a great support. My father was. He used to always write me notes when I was in college. So he was very supportive. But I have a good group of friends and a good group of, like when I say inner circle friends and then like outer circle supportive women. And any guy, girl, if you're going to achieve anything in life, you're going to have a little crew or a little group, a posse, we used to call it back in the day, but whatever y'all call it now, my squad, whatever you call it, you're going to have that because they'll help talk you off the ledge when stuff happens. And if they're going in the same direction that you're going in, they'll help spur you to greatness. So a lot of people who usually achieve because they have like a little tribe of folks who will achieve with them. So I would encourage you, find your tribe, sow something into that tribe, or you give something and make sure that you can receive from that tribe as well, or that they're pushing you in the direction you need to go in.
Thank you. I'm Samira. I'm from the City of Courage. So this is a bit of a personal question. So I want to be a lawyer when I grow older. And I take like hard classes that will help me in the future, and they're extremely stressful. And my friends and even my family are telling me that maybe I shouldn't do this line of work when I grow older because of the stress it's, making me feel. So I'm just wondering, what advice do you have to give to me, and what can I do about that? Because I really, really want to be a lawyer when I grow older.
A young lady asked me this exact same question about 4 years ago. So this is really interesting. But you have to find out why you're stressing, right? What you got to spend some time. I call it chair time, like where you sit in a chair with a light. And for me, I sit there with sacred text, and I sit there, writing out some things to try to figure out what is it. Is it that I don't like wrestling with these ideas? Is it the volume of work? Is it, I don't like doing this kind of law, I would want to do this kind of law. I don't want to wrestle with these issues, I want to wrestle with these. Because most professions have a spectrum of things that are a part of that profession. And you may not want to do law like, corporate law, but you may want to do, a different type of law where you do more work with the city, or maybe you're a go-getter and you want to be the DA, or that type of thing. You kind of have to decide you don't have to make it, like I said, all or nothing. Find out, spend some time, and if there are people in your life that you trust, ask them to help you, get to the bottom of it. Why is this so stressful? Is it because, what is it about it? And if you can identify that, that can help you shape then I won't do this part of it. I can do another part of it. And there's a broad and wide, you're young enough where there's a broad and wide space for you to be able to still grow and become. So I'm going to ask you to breathe and, take it down a notch, right? Breathe. And then just open yourself, look at this whole situation with curiosity instead of, this isn't gonna work. Try to look at it with curiosity and see what you can learn about it and see what you might be able to translate to how you might pursue that in a different way before you say, I'm gonna let it go.
Thank you.
Now, Kim, you have a couple of minutes after we're done, right? We have a couple of announcements to do, but you're good for a little bit? Okay. Before we do a couple of things, and I turn this over for a special presentation as well as a couple of announcements for both groups. One more time for the incredible Kimberly Carter, right? Yeah.